Hey everyone, Assalamu alaikum. I'm Manahil Remote Job Wali, assistant to my mentor Rehan Lawala. I help him design school curriculum at Rehan School. And I'm currently a level 2 student at our Korangi campus, and I'm 17 years old. I am also a remote job consultant on a mission to empower millions to embrace remote work with over 450 plus podcasts interviews. I've had the privilege of learning from and sharing the journeys of inspiring individuals across the world. My dream is to become a Nobel laureate and Guinness Book World Record holder. And through this podcast, I hope to illuminate the pathway of others who wants to aim higher in life. Today, I am incredibly excited to welcome someone whose true force in leadership and career growth, Andrea Wasserman. She is a serial Fortune 500 executives and Forbes writer and the brilliant mind behind the executive helping rising leaders and promotions grow influence and take their careers to the next level. If you ever felt stuck, overlooked, or unsure, hey, can you hear me? Oh, all right. Sorry, I was stuck. So, if you ever felt stuck, overlooked, or unsure of how to break through the next level, this podcast is for you. So, let's get started and welcome our guest. Hey, welcome to the show, ma'am, Miss Andrea Weserman. How are you doing today?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for giving me your precious time.
You're very welcome.
All right. So, before moving on to questions, can you please introduce yourself for my viewers?
Well, sure. I actually think you did a great job with the introduction. As you suggested, I am the founder of the Executive Express, which helps mid career leaders accelerate their careers, get raises and promotions, and become senior executives as quickly as they possibly can. So that's my main focus right now. But as you also suggested, I previously was an executive across several Fortune 500 and other companies, really loved building businesses, and now want to help other people build their careers and businesses.
All right. Thank you so much for your fantastic introduction. So now let's move on to the questions. My first question is for you: is what's one lie people believe about reaching the C-suite that you wish you could erase forever?
That hard work is enough. We would love for that to be enough, but the reality is that there are so many other factors that you need to be thinking about besides how hard you're working, including all of the people, policies, politics, and culture around you.
All right, that's really fantastic. So you will help people accelerate to executive roles. What's the invisible work behind visible success?
That's such a good question. And I love how you're making that distinction between what's visible and what's invisible. There's actually a lot of planning that can be done behind the scenes to make sure that you're understanding the environment that you work in totality. That's a big piece of it. And then there are other actions you can take, like being very, very strategic every morning on how you want to show up throughout different parts of the day for different people in different meetings. And so that's an example of something that really is invisible. Nobody is seeing you do it, and yet doing it can make all the difference.
All right, thank you so much for your answer. So, what system do you believe quietly keep great talent from rising, and how do you coach people to break them?
So there's often this sense that in order to lead or to manage others, You need to look at the organizational chart and see who reports to you in a solid line. If you can picture the way that an organizational chart is designed and how those reporting lines are shown, there again is this sense that you need to look at that and then manage the people who report to you in an official way. And that's really a mistake because there is so much opportunity in organizations, first of all, to lead 360 degrees all around, and also to lead via influence across the organization. And so, really thinking about ways to step into your power and do that instead of thinking of your sphere of influence or control as only being the people who officially report to you.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much for your answer. So, is executive presence something people are born with, or can it intentionally?
Nobody's ever asked me that before, whether executive presence is something that you're born with or can build intentionally. You can build it. Now, that said, everybody is born with some kind of presence simply by nature of the fact that we are here in front of each other, right? So that is a presence. But the way that you detract from that or ideally enhance that and build it over time is definitely something that can be taught and can be learned. And it's also worth noting that the executive presence that may make sense and be valuable for you to demonstrate in one organization is not the same type of presence that may be necessary in a different organization or with a different group of people. And so that ability to what I always call style flex can be critical in making sure that you're showing up with the presence you want in every setting.
All right, that's really amazing answer. Thank you so much for your appreciation and for your answer. So now let's move on to the next question. So you talk about unlocking the code of an organization. What are the first three clues people should look for?
I do always talk about how organizations have this mysterious or magical 18-digit combination lock that needs to be solved if you want to be able to get ahead. And different factors that go into solving this are who your boss is, who the peers are that you need to influence, who is below you on the organizational chart, what the corporate culture is, what the politics are, what the actual policies are, as well as the industry in which you are working and the macroeconomic or more global factors that are affecting your business and the way that it's run. So in order to figure out what your path is for accelerating your career, these are some of the factors that you need to be thinking about and studying.
All right, you are absolutely right. Thank you so much for your answer. So let's move on to the next question. My next question is for you. How can someone make people believe in their leadership before they even have the title?
It goes back to what I said about leading via influence in some cases, not waiting until you have all of the solid reporting lines on an organizational chart. What you really want to do to show that you're a leader, even if nobody is saying it yet, is look for ways to step up, be proactive, take the reins on a project where appropriate, and certainly lead others by influencing them, not just by looking for places where you have formal control.
Okay, that's really wonderful. Thank you so much for your answer. So, what's belief about career you held 10 years ago that you know completely disagree with?
I'm not sure if it's a belief that I specifically held 10 years ago or whether it's just something that I wasn't sure of yet. But there is certainly a lot of debate out there about whether you can be likable and also be a leader, be a senior executive. That comes up even more often for women. And what I do know now firmly is that you can certainly be likable and kind and empathetic and still get ahead, so to speak. It's hard to see at this angle, but there's actually a print hanging behind me that says work hard and be nice to people. And that is something that I firmly believe, and that is actually effective.
You are right. Thank you so much for your answer. So let's talk about confidence. If confidence is not natural, what are practical habits to manufacture it?
Well, first of all, it can be very helpful if confidence is not coming naturally to somebody to actually have a conversation with a trusted mentor or a peer or a work friend or an executive coach to really get clear on what your strengths are so that you know where you can be confident. People don't need to be confident about everything. It's actually great to express genuine vulnerability and say, here's what I'm good at, and here's where I'm really confident, and here's where I'm not. But being clear about where you should and will be confident is very important. And so it's understanding what those strengths are. It's also comes through preparation. So it's very hard to show up, for example, for a presentation or for a big meeting if you and in a confident way, if you've done no preparation work. But if you've done your homework, you've looked at the data, you've pre-read the materials, you've put together a bullet point list of talking points, you're certainly going to show up with a calmer and more confident presence and feel better about your performance.
Thank you so much for that answer. Thank you so much. So now let's talk about mistake. What's a mistake most people make in their LinkedIn or personal branding that silently costs them promotions?
Well, it's a good question. I don't want to suggest to anybody that what you have or don't have in your LinkedIn is the driver of whether you are or are not promoted in your current organization. There's so much that goes into that, including your performance and your relationships and all of the things that we're talking about. So again, don't want to suggest that anybody within your current company is looking at your LinkedIn to make promotion determinations. A mistake, however, that I do see people making on LinkedIn is not really owning the full scope and breadth of what they do. And so sometimes people will take a narrow job title that may be very official, that may come from some kind of internal framework for job titles, and just use that and expect that any profile viewer knows what it means, when really it can be helpful to translate things like that into plain English and actually outline the true scope of responsibilities that you have, which may read as much more impressive than an official job title alone.
All right. Thank you so much for your answer. So, what advice would you give to your 25 years old self that would change her life trajectory?
I think it is what I shared earlier about realizing that hard work is not enough and it requires being really strategic in how you approach everything, not just exactly what you do. I also would say stay in touch with everybody you meet. These relationships bring not just value, but lots of joy and fulfillment in life.
Yeah, thank you so much for your answer. So, can ambition ever become a trap? How do you balance drive with mental peace?
I think ambition looks different for everybody, and you can be ambitious about many areas of your life. For some people, that certainly is work and professional success. For some people, it might be having a hobby that they're really passionate about, that they want to be the best at, maybe something in the exercise or athletic realm. For some people, it's being the best parent that they can be. And so I think really thinking about what motivates you and what type of ambition, if any, you want to display is helpful. You need to be doing it for yourself and not for anybody else.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much for your answer. So, what's your vision for transforming the workspace, and where do you see the executive express in 10 years?
I'm really passionate about helping mid career leaders become senior executives as quickly as they want. And sometimes that means being able to climb the corporate ladder, as they say, which now more often means a jungle gym because you're not just going straight up, you're going all over the place to get there. But anyway, passionate about helping people do that within their organizations or by making a leap to a different organization altogether. And so just helping more and more people do that, both in one-to-one settings, in group settings, via corporate workshops. That's where I see this going.
Okay, thank you so much for your answer. So, how should someone deal with a boss who doesn't advocate for the growth?
Certainly delicately with a certain amount of sensitivity. And most of all, I would say coming from a place of curiosity. If your boss is not advocating for your growth, not even supporting that, the most important thing you can do is be curious about why. Is it that this person thinks that you're not as great as you think you are? And that can be a hard thing to hear, but it's important to know. Is it that they think you are pretty great, but there's simply not an obvious next step in the organization for you? And so there's not really anything for them to advocate for in their mind. Is it that they do think you're promotable, but they are overwhelmed with their own priorities and simply don't have time to advocate for anybody else? So the first step in this case really does need to be curiosity and also transparency about being upfront that you are somebody who wants to grow. And if that is not possible, then understanding why and what you can do to change your own trajectory.
Yeah, you are right. Thank you so much for your answer. So, uh, what would you want to be remembered by the people you coach?
I want to be known for making a difference in people's work and lives and helping them get to where they want to be.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for your answer. So, what's the biggest myth about waiting your turn for a promotion?
I think the biggest myth about waiting your turn for a promotion, if that's what you're being told, is that it is automatically going to come and that all you need to do is wait. When the reality is that nobody is going to manage your career in the way that you will. And so you need to be proactive in managing up and positioning yourself strategically for that promotion.
Okay, thank you so much for your answer. So, have you ever taken a career risk that backfired, and what did you learn?
I think that, backfired may be a stronger word than I would use, but I think that overall we need to be cognizant of the risks that we're taking in any job. I often say that many of the jobs I have held didn't exist before I had them. They were newly created roles. In some cases, because there had been a restructure that created the role. In other cases, because I was tasked with starting something new within a large company, entrepreneurship, if you will. And in some cases, these experiments, these new roles that are created for one reason or another, work out really well. And in some cases, the organization says, whoops, that wasn't something that we should have done. And so going in eyes wide open and knowing that is really important. And then being able to consciously take or not take those risks.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much for your answer. So, what does truly mean to on your seat at the table?
I think owning your seat at the table can mean a lot of different things to a lot of people. For many of us, it's about knowing what our sphere of competence, expertise, confidence is, and then making sure that those are the tables we're trying to sit at so that our skills and our interests are relevant and we can show up as a leader.
Yeah, that's really great answer. Thank you so much for your answer. So, is it possible to lead without authority, and how?
Yes, this is exactly what I mean when I talk about leading through influence, which I've mentioned a couple of times now. You don't need to wait to be given authority by anybody on an organizational chart or through formal reporting lines. You need to be aware of the influence that you really can have, and even more importantly, the influence that you need to have in order to get your work done and get your work done with great impact.
All right, thank you so much for your answer. So, what's your strategy for bouncing back after public failure or rejection?
I often remind people that nobody is watching as closely as you are. And so it may feel like something is very public, and most people won't even know that it happened, won't even have caught it. The news cycle is so fast. Nobody is seeing everything in their feeds on social media. And so just realizing that can be very, very helpful. Something else to keep in mind is that everybody has failures or setbacks at certain times, and it's rarely as bad or as unique as you may think it is.
Thank you so much for your answer. So, what's the difference between being a high performer and being seen as leadership material?
So there's a book that you may have heard of called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And that is a lot of the difference between, as you asked, being seen as a high performer versus being seen as leadership material. You can be a very high performer in your current job, getting the work done, shipping it, having the work be done very well. But that doesn't mean that you are ready for the next level where you need to lead a team or a larger team and be strategic and have a certain level of presence and be able to manage more and be able to sit in more senior rooms. And so it's about showing that what you're doing today is not all you can do, nor all you want to do.
Thank you so much for your answer. As you know, everyone wants a short way, short pathway, and wants their short term goals and short term pathways. So I want to ask you, in your opinion, what is the fastest way to build trust in a new environment?
The fastest way to build trust in a new environment is asking people what their priorities are and how you can help them achieve their goals. First of all, you should be genuine in asking those questions. It shouldn't just be about the short-term outcome of building trust, but it will build trust and it will allow you to form a relationship based on the way you partner with these people, which also may really help you in your own role.
All right, you are. Thank you so much for your fantastic answer. So, if someone feels stuck in version of themselves they be outgrown, where should they begin?
If you feel kind of stuck in a version of yourself that you've outgrown, you really want to think about where is it that you want to go and who do you want to be. Feeling stuck and being aware of that feeling is obviously the first step. But in order to get unstuck, you need the clarity of having created a vision for what is ahead. And then you can, by yourself or with somebody else, like a coach, work on the bridge to get from where you are stuck to where you envision going once you've grown.
You are right. Thank you so much for your answer. So, in your opinion, oh sorry. So, how do you know when it's time to reinvent yourself?
I think that's a great follow up to your last question. You had asked about what to do when you feel stuck. And I said, figure out where you want to go, and then we can develop a path to get you there. That's really the time when you potentially need to reinvent, not always. Reinvent is a really strong word, certainly suggests a huge shift or pivot. And that may not be necessary for a lot of people.
Then, what's the piece of advice would you like to give for my viewers and for me?
A general piece of advice. I think I would end with something I said earlier, which is that hard work is just not enough, and being really aware of that. And so if all you feel you're doing is heads down, getting your job done, definitely be picking that head up and thinking about what else you need to be doing to gain visibility and recognition and build relationships.
Thank you so much for your advice. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. That was an incredible conversation. A huge thank you too for sharing such powerful insights on leadership, growth, and breaking barriers in corporate world. So, listeners, right now feel inspired. Take one step today towards change, whether it's learning something new, reaching out to a mentor, or believing in yourself a little more. Your pathway is waiting to be illuminated. So don't forget to follow and subscribe to Illuminating Path for more empowering conversation with leaders, change makers, and leaders from around the world. I'm Anahil Mojawali, and together we are building a future where young people lead, innovate, and rise. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep believing. Thank you so much, ma'am Andrea, again for your valuable time.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Bye. Have a wonderful day ahead.